On Sunday mornings, we've kind of started going through the Old Testament, kind of story by story or person by person. We talked about biblical marriage as we looked at some examples we needed to avoid, not copy. And then we looked at some examples of parenting we needed to avoid and not copy. So the last 2 weeks, I've done a message. I kind of sprung out of that and I've been doing a message. It's the third and last part called Things We Did Right as Parents. Next Sunday and the next Sunday and maybe the next Sunday, I'm going to be doing a message on the world as it is right now. It's probably going to be called Upside Down. I've got more information that I can begin to share with you. I pray that you will, I hope that you'll pray for me that I can articulate what needs to be articulated. If you've been around here, you know I'm not a big guy. Some people find a demon behind every bush. He's got the demon of attitude. He got the demon of nicotine. He got the demon of whatever. I'm just not none of that at all. But I'm telling you, there's a satanic work behind what's going on worldwide. And so we're going to talk about that next few weeks. So I need you to pray for me so I can get that right. Let's talk about today's topic. We've made it quick. We've been through 14 points. I want to go quickly through those. I won't be reading scriptures that have been used in them. So in your outline, number one of the things we did right as parents is we loved each other well. Our daughter saw how a Christian man should treat a Christian woman and vice versa. Number two, we sought to follow the Lord fully. Following Jesus is all that our girls ever knew. We didn't just tell them how to follow him, we showed them how to do it every day of their lives. Number three, we modeled and taught godly behavior. We lived what we taught. Number four, we were more committed to who our children would become than to how our children felt. More committed to who they had become than how they felt. We cared more about how they turned out, what kind of people they became, than we cared about our approval rating with them. Our goal was not for them to think that we were great. Our goal was for one day everybody else who knew them to think that they were great. Number five, God determined how we raised our kids, not other parents. How other parents were raising their kids and what they might have thought about how we were raising our kids had no influence on us whatsoever. We wanted to get this right before God. That was our only goal. Number six, we protected our children. You have to protect your children physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually. We protected them from others, and we protected them from their own inexperience and immaturity. A lot of people are good at protecting their kids from others, maybe bad influences, but they're not so good at protecting them from themselves. So you can't let them get into situations where they don't have the maturity and experience to handle it. They'll fail. Number seven, we sheltered our children from our pain. Don't put the burdens of adulthood on your children. Children ought to be able to live carefree lives. But trauma steals that from them. And if they're growing up in a house with a lot of fussing and fighting and all that, they're traumatized. Don't burden them with your adult problems. Number eight, we never modeled any behavior that could be destructive to our kids. We never modeled any behavior that could be destructive to our kids. If our girls were going to pick up any bad habits, they weren't going to get them from us. Monkey see, monkey do. If the second monkey ends up in trouble because what he or she saw the first monkey doing, the first monkey is part of the second monkey's problem. We lived in such a way that if the third and fourth monkeys did what the first and second monkeys did, the third and fourth monkeys had pretty good lives. Did you get that? Number nine, we had a lot of fun. Told a bunch of stories about this. We were strict, but we had a lot of fun. Be creative. At Christmas with our grandkids, Betsy and I were talking about this past week. We don't just give them a gift. We give them a clue. We give them a puzzle. We make it fun. Number 10, we spoiled each other, not our kids. We spoiled each other, not our kids. Give your spouse everything that you can, that they want, and you can give them if you can afford it. Do for him or her everything they want if you can do it. Isn't that what love does? Doesn't love say, well, you want this, so I want to give it to you? You want this, so I want to do it for you. Spoiling each other, not just being good to each other, but being great to each other, is an investment in your marriage, therefore your future, and it's an investment in your kids' future. Who do you think has the best childhood, grows up the most secure? The children who grow up with two parents who love each other, or the children who grow up with two parents who are fussing and fighting all the time? This is an IQ test, okay? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? Loving each other is one of the best gifts, is one of the best gifts you could ever give your children. But you don't do this for your kids. You give them everything they want, it'll ruin them. They'll end up feeling entitled to get everything they want, and it'll set them up for a lifetime of unhappiness, because a whole lot of life is not getting what you want. Am I in the right room? Number 11, we never excuse bad behavior. We never excuse bad behavior. We expected and fought for good behavior. We never said things like, well, kids will be kids. Everybody's doing it. And we definitely never said, I was bad when I was that age, but I turned out pretty good. We never did those things. We never excused their bad behavior. Number 12, we never settled for bad behavior. We never settled for it. This is similar but different. Parents who settle say things like this: well, at least they don't blank. Well, they're drinking. Well, at least they're not on drugs. Well, they're having sex. Well, at least they're using birth control. And we do all these things to try to find comfort in the fact that our kid isn't the worst kid at the school. Our goal was not for our kid to not be the worst kid at the school. Our goal was for our kids to be the best kids at the school. Some parents even help their kids behave badly. They surrender to their child's promiscuity by providing birth control or an abortion. Some parents allow their kids to drink and get drunk at their house with their friends so they're not on the road. Try explaining either one of those to God at the judgment. Number 13, we allowed our kids to suffer consequences for their choices. We allowed them to suffer consequences for their choices. Now, our girls were really, really good kids. But if they messed up, we let them pay the price for doing so. The most important lesson that your child can learn is that choices have consequences. It's what Adam and Eve were taught, the first thing they were taught by God. They need to know that my life is going to turn out in large part based on the choices I make. I make good choices, I'm likely to have a good life. I make bad choices, I'm likely to have a not so good life. We told them about, we let them suffer consequences. I'm going to tell you a funny story here in a moment about that. Number 14, we cared more about character than we did looks or grades or sports. Could have added in there popularity. We cared about their character. What mattered most to us is the kind of people our girls became, not what they achieved. Their character was more important than their popularity. It still is. Now let's get the new material. Number 15, if you want any of that details, you get the last 2 weeks, you get a lot more detail on those. Number 15, we taught them that right and wrong are never determined by who's doing it. Right and wrong are never determined by who's doing it. Right is right, wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter how old you are, how smart you are, how rich you are, how whatever else you are. Many would think that something's wrong, but if somebody they care about does it, they excuse it or even pretend it's right. Wrong is wrong if the person you love most is doing it. And right is right if the person you hate most is doing it. Being a president or a pastor doesn't give you permission to do the wrong thing. It gives you greater responsibility to do the right thing. It's sad that people in public positions who should at least be some semblance of role models no longer are. We now live in a time where you may vote for someone whose policies you agree with, but you have to hold your nose while you do it. It's not a matter of voting for the person that you really wish would get elected. It's a matter of voting against the person that you're praying doesn't. Am I in the right room? If you're not in the room with me, you need to get out of La La Land and get in the room with me. Okay? Donald Trump was a wonderful president, but he ain't much of a person. If you think he is, you're a bad judge of character. Number 16, I'm sorry. We never made our children the center of the universe. We never made our children the center of the universe. Listen closely, I'll say this twice. If they're the center of your universe, they'll think that they're the center of everybody else's universe. If they're the center of your universe, they'll think that they're the center of everybody else's universe. Our world did not revolve around our kids. As I discussed in my book on boundaries, God was first, our world revolved around him. Our girls growing up you can't imagine how many times they went to the hospital. That's where we were going. You can't imagine how many funerals they've attended, because that's what we had to do. It wasn't all fun and games. It wasn't all everything's about you. Let's make you happy, happy, happy. I remember one parent said, fun, fun, fun. Not a good policy. We were doing, some of you are old enough to remember Juanita McBee, who was here for years, sweet, sweet, sweet lady. And she died at the funeral. I'm doing the graveside. Our car's parked about 50 yards away. Betsy's there with me. The girls, Emily's probably 3 and maybe Sarah 7. They could have been 4 and 6. They're in the car. And so while I'm doing the graveside, Sarah has dared Emily to start honking the horn, which she has taken to dare, okay? So now this horn is going and going and going, and Betsy's going. And then it didn't go well for them that evening. Anyway, Betsy and I were second to each other. God first, the other second. If the girls wanted us to choose between them and God, they lost. If they wanted us to choose between them or our spouse, they lost. The world did not revolve around them. If you pick your children over your spouse, you're likely to end up with an Isaac-Rebecca episode. And that was a mess. They were third in our lives. We never considered it a sin or being a bad parent to miss one of their games or an event. Now, if you're never there, that's a problem. But if you think that if I miss a game, they're going to grow up and have anxiety problems, then you got bigger problems than that. It's healthy for you to do things without them. It's healthy for them to do things without you. If not, they grow up thinking the only safe place is in daddy's shadow or mama's shadow. That doesn't make for a good adult. So you want to bring them to church. You want to bring them to Bible school. You want to get them in circumstances where you're not there and they find out they can be safe and life can be good without you hovering over them all the time. We went on vacations without them. It was good for us. It was good for them. I suggest if you got 2 weeks of vacation and you got grandparents available, take 1 week with them, 1 week without them. It'll be good for everybody in the family. If your life revolves around them, they'll expect the world to, and it won't. They need to know that there is a God and they're not him. They need to know that the world exists for his glory, not for their happiness. The only person who's that worried about their happiness is you and your mate and their other parent, right? Nobody else is going to care much about it. So again, I say all the time, it's not your job to make your kids happy. It's your job to teach your kids how to be happy. The adult skill they need is, I'm not getting my way, but I'm a happy person. If they don't learn to do that, they're going to be a real unhappy person because they're going to not get their way a lot in this life. We never made our children the center of the universe. Remember, you're raising them to let go, not to keep. You're raising them not to need you, not to need you. You're raising them to do okay without you. If you're not doing that, you're codependent. And you're damaging your kid. You're crippling them. Number 17, we modeled and expected servanthood. We modeled and expected servanthood. Mark 10:45, Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve and to give. Jesus taught that the greatest people in his kingdom were servants. Even though he was Lord of all, he became a servant. He modeled it, he taught it. Rather than sitting back and expecting to be served, we taught our girls to get up and do something, to discover needs, to see what needs to be done and go do it, to see who needs to be talked to and go talk to them Give them a listening ear. Have you noticed that those who serve other people well tend to succeed and have a lot of friends? People are friends with you because of what you do for them. You do understand that, don't you? The people you love the most do the most for you. That's why you love them. And the people you love the least, they don't do anything for you. That's why you don't love them so much. Am I in the right room? Y'all look at me like a deer in the headlights this morning, you know? That's how the world works. So you got to teach you to be givers, not takers. A number of years ago, Betsy took a bunch of food to a home of a family who no longer attends here. The food had been collected for somebody Betsy didn't even know. The family's teenage daughter's boyfriend was there sitting on the sofa. So Betsy makes several trips back and forth with all this food, car in the house, car in the house, car in the house, car in the house, while he sat on his lazy rear end. The young couple's married now. She's going to need your prayer, okay? Had I been the parents of that girl, I would have asked him to help. Could you help her? If he didn't move immediately, I would have told him to get up and help. I'm not asking now. If he didn't do that, I would say, it's been nice knowing you, but I never expect to see you or have you ever again be around this house or my daughter. I'm trying to raise adults. Who are you raising? That's a kid who's going to have problems all his life. Being lazy and useless wasn't an option in our house. How many of you know somebody who's lazy and useless? Come on. And they think that their problem is everybody but them, right? So we went on mission trips to Kingston, Jamaica. We served. We taught our girls how to serve. Jesus is quoted in Acts 20, verse 35 as saying, it's more blessed to give than to receive. That's true for two reasons. One, if you're the one who's giving, you have something to give. If you're the one who's receiving, you need something. You're the one needing to be given to, like these people you just saw from Africa. Second, Jesus has genetically wired us up to get joy out of giving. When we give, we get joy. We get joy at Christmas, don't we? Giving gifts to our kids and all that, seeing them all excited. We get joy. Why? Out of the giving. So some people, for example, let's say take a week, and some people go on a mission trip, South Dakota, Belize, wherever that might be. And another group of people go on a vacation. They go to Hawaii or whatever else. It's a real nice vacation. Now, I'm going to submit to you the people who come back from the mission trip are happier than the people who went on vacation. Almost every time. Because they've been giving. It's been about somebody else, which somehow just resonates with us because we're made in God's image. These other people come back. Have you had this vacation with your kids? When are we going to get there? He touched me. I'm tired. I'm hot. I wanted that bad. It's not fair. You come back from your vacation exhausted, not refreshed. Been there, done that? Being wired up to give, we're also wired up to get joy out of serving others. At this annual Christmas party, we'll give them, I don't know how much, $30,000, $40,000 worth of stuff. But we'll be the ones to leave with all the joy. Oh, they'll be thrilled. They'll have a bigger Christmas. They'll probably have the next 10. But they won't get the biggest blessing out of it. Why? Because that's how God has wired you up. Some of you have given Christmas to other families. You found a family in need and you went and gave Christmas to them. Wasn't that fun? Fabulous. Number 18, we modeled and expected compassion. We modeled and expected compassion. Micah 6:8 says, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and walk humbly with your God? I had a special needs cousin who died in her 20s. She never walked, she never talked, she never got out of a diaper. Betsy's youngest brother has a special needs daughter who's now in her 20s. We all adore her. Bailey doesn't talk. She may have the mental capacity of a 4-year-old, and she loves Jesus maybe more than anybody in this room. Pretty amazing. She's been here with us at church several times. Bailey's always adored Sarah and Emily, and now she adores their children. It's helped to teach them compassion. At one of our early Christmas parties in Lee County, Virginia, a family showed up with a 10-year-old boy with Down syndrome. It was kind of like, well, how are we going to navigate this? Well, I knew exactly how to navigate it. I think Emily may have been in high school or something. I gave the kid to Emily. Emily played with him, took him around, managed him the whole time. He had the time of his life. Emily probably has the biggest heart of anybody I know. Compassion. We tried unsuccessfully to give an orphan from Jamaica a college education at Johnson, now university. Didn't work. Betsy met a homeless black man who was ringing the bell at Christmas time for Salvation Army down at Sam's Club. And she saw him there, and it was a warm day, and he was hot. She said, let me go in and buy you something to drink and eat. So she goes in, buys him a meal, brings it out. He says, here, you sit down and eat that, I'll ring your bell. So she rang the bell, and boy, was she working those people coming in that door. You didn't want her there. She told me about him, and I met him. Really articulate man, intelligent. We decided we're going to try to give him his life back. We're going to try to give him a job and a car and a life and everything. We tried, but again, we were unsuccessful. He relapsed and disappeared. Many of you have done something similar. You met someone, you had deep compassion for their circumstance, and you tried to make a difference, maybe give them a new life. Like us, it might not have turned out as you had hoped, and some of you may now suffer from compassion fatigue. You've done it a bunch of times. And sadly, so many times it doesn't work out. If you recall, David raised the money for the temple, but God wouldn't let him build it. He'd been a man of bloodshed. He'd fought all these wars to protect and expand Israel. And so God would not let him. God sent Nathan the prophet, who rebuked him over Bathsheba and told him he couldn't build the temple. His son Solomon would. So historically, it's called Solomon's temple. But in 1 Kings 8:18, God sent Nathan to tell David, listen closely, that it was good, that it was in his heart to build that temple. It was good that it was in his heart. You may have been disappointed that what you had hoped for didn't work out. We sure were. But God loved what you hoped for and what you tried to do. It was good that it was in your heart. Listen closely, I'll say this twice. God doesn't measure how things turn out that we ultimately don't have control over. He measures the intentions of our hearts and what we do. He doesn't measure things by how they turn out when we don't have the power to make them turn out like we want them to. What he does measure is the compassion in our heart and the willingness to try to do something. So go do it. Say, well, I might get disappointed again. You might. You might get disappointed in what they did, but God will not be disappointed in what you did. You'll be measuring the encounter by how well they do. God will be measuring the encounter by how well you're doing. To have that kind of heart and to be trying to help somebody. So teach compassion, live it. Truth is more often caught than taught. Monkey see, monkey do. Make sure the monkeys are seeing who you want them to become. Number 19. We never fought in front of our children. We never fought in front of our children. Sadly, some kids grow up in a war zone, fussing, fighting, yelling, and even in some cases, physical abuse. These things traumatize young souls. You and your spouse will have disagreements. It's going to happen. But have those at another time and in another place instead of in front of your kids. If you don't have the emotional maturity to keep from arguing in front of your children, the restraint to say, I'm really mad, but I'm going to save it, then how do you expect your kids to learn how to do any of those things? The kids' chances are slim that they're going to have any kind of emotional maturity or what's called emotional intelligence because their parents don't have any. They get mad, they let it fly. Especially in a world like today where divorce is so prevalent, your kids will grow up with all this anxiety over whether the two of you are going to stay together. When Emily was in the first or second grade, don't remember which it was, a classmate told her that her mom and dad were divorcing. I'll never forget it. She came home, told us about it, and said that she was glad that she would never have to worry about that. I was glad too. What a gift to our girls. Now, I'm not saying that to make anybody feel bad. There are marriages that you should get out of. There are marriages some of you were in you had to get out of because of the abuse and the fussing and fighting. But I'm just understand that's the case. Now, Betsy and I disagreed. We never considered divorce, murder several times, but never divorce, okay? We've had big disagreements, but we didn't do it in front of them. Betsy and I did finally have a disagreement in front of Emily when she was in college over going to an out-of-town wedding that I didn't want to go to. I'm not sure Sarah's ever seen us have an argument. We argued plenty of times with them, but not with each other in front of them. Work out your problems some other time in some other place. Number 20. And by the way, let me just say this. Your children may be young and not mentally able to understand the conflict in their home, but they can emotionally understand it. You can damage them and they don't have any idea what's going on. Protect them from that. Number 20, we didn't allow our children to mistreat others. We didn't allow them to mistreat others. Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word as is good for edification according to the need of the moment, so that it will give grace to those who hear. Verse 32, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving each other, just as God in Christ has forgiven you. Mistreating other people was not an option in our home. I can take a funny story when Sarah was like 3 or something. I think she's 3. Emily wasn't even around yet. And we had some guests in her home. A couple I'd gone to high school with, and they came to her house. They had a girl about Sarah's age. Well, Sarah had never had anybody come into her territory and play with her toys. We didn't think anything of it. She's just a sweet little girl. And we'd cut her hair in this bowl thing. Everybody thinks she was Japanese, but anyway, that's another story. They'd come in there, and then so this girl would get Sarah's thing, and the next thing we know, Sarah's bitten her. We thought, where did that come from? So we spanked her. About 5-10 minutes later, she bit her again, and we spanked her again, and we bit her again, or she bit her again. And I think we spanked her again. I don't remember what we did after that, but they've never come back. That's another story. But anyway, I don't blame them. We were in the home of a family where a girl was literally choking the air out of Emily. Could have really hurt her. Your children have to be taught how to relate, how to treat people. If they don't learn how to get along with others, especially if they mistreat others, the only kind of friends they'll ever have are the kind you don't want them to have. How people end up in gangs, it's just where they gravitate to. They're not gravitating to better people and a better life, they're gravitating to worse people and a worse life. The mistreatment of others can be emotional, verbal, and mental, and it can be physical. It's real easy to do now with the internet and social media, especially Snapchat. Some unparented kids become bullies. This was never a problem in our house, but it wasn't going to be, I can tell you that. Number 21, we required our children to make things right. We required them to make things right. So in Matthew 5:23, this is in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says in 23:4, if you're presenting your offering at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and present your offering. In these verses, Jesus teaches us an incredibly important principle. You can't be right with God if you're not trying to be right with people. William talked about this a little bit Wednesday night. If you're going to be right vertically with God, you have to try to be right horizontally with people. Jot down and listen to Romans 12:18. Romans 12:18. If possible, so far as it depends on you, stop. Since it says if possible, it means it's not always possible. So far as it depends on you means you do what you can do, but you may not be able to fix something that's broken. If possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. You can't be right with somebody who's committed to being wrong with you, can you? So you've offended somebody. You just want to move on. You come to worship. In these verses, here's what God would say to you. I don't want you singing these glorious songs about me. I don't want you telling somebody you love me. I want you to get right with the person you offended. That is worship. And once you do that, come back and I'll accept the other kind. We required our girls to make things right. If you broke something, you fixed it. If you told something that wasn't true, you go back to everybody you told it to and correct the information. If you took something that wasn't yours, you give it back. If you said something hurtful, you apologize for it. If you borrowed something and broke it, you replaced it. And we modeled what we taught. Bessie, years ago, her friend and one of her friends in Lebanon had gotten a scooter, and Bessie said, her knees were giving her more problems. She couldn't walk like she used to do. She used to kind of just power walking, like walking as fast as she can without jogging. It wore me out. But anyway, that's another story. Anyway, she said, if I could get a little scooter, I could ride out here in the country, because we live out here in the country and ride out. So we went and bought her a 150 scooter. Grant went on the trip with us. He decided to buy Tracy one. That was an exciting afternoon, but we won't get into that one. Betsy began to ride and then wanted me to borrow Tracy so I could ride with her. Well, I'd always been afraid of motorcycles. I had a cousin who was an all-state football player at Powell, lost his leg on one. I'd never been on one. She wanted me to ride with her, so I borrowed Grant and Tracy's scooter and I rode in. I looked like Herman the Munster on a tricycle. My shoulders were wider than the rearview mirror, so if I'd go look behind me, I had to do this little number. We were riding around Kingston, turning around in a cul-de-sac that had about an inch of fine dust. It had been dry like it is now. And I dropped Tracy's bike. Scratched my leg up real good, scratched, I was in shorts, scratched the bike up some. I broke it, I scratched it, so I bought it. So now we both have 150 scooters. Why should I do that? Because I'm the one who messed it up. It's my responsibility to fix it. I'm modeling what we're teaching. I later sold the 150 scooter and bought me an 800 motorcycle. On a Mother's Day after that, I surprised Betsy with a new 300 Vespa scooter, affectionately known as Sugar because it's such a sweet ride. Sugar will go 80 miles per hour. We've ridden with some of you. We were riding one time with a couple of guys on Harleys. And if you know where Highway 25 is, it's going up the mountain to Veterans Overlook. We were going up that long, steep hill. And the two Harleys were up in front, and Betsy and I were in the back, and we had these headsets in our helmets, and we talked to each other the whole time we ride. And so we're riding, and they're going about 65 up this hill, and I told Betsy, I said, take them. So next thing you know, these Harley guys are riding along, and this little scooter goes, whoo, just blows right by. Of course, you know what they had to do. They had to show her theirs was bigger than hers, so they blow by her, and we laughed about it. Sugar can boogie. I finally moved up to an 1800 that I refer to as the Beast, rightly named. It'll go 150, but not with me on it. It's important in a marriage to do things apart, just like it is with your kids, and it's important to do things together. So one of our together things is riding the motorcycle. We have a photo here of Sugar and the Beast up on Blue Ridge Parkway. Anyway, I'm the ugly one on the left. I digress. I was talking about requiring our kids to make things right. When Sarah was in elementary school, she said something unkind about a teacher. I don't remember how we found out, but we did. Emily may have told us. I'm not sure about that. So we made her call the teacher and apologize. We didn't just tell her to do it, because then she might or might not do it and come back and say she did. We made sure she did it. A great way to do this is tell your kids you're going to have to call so-and-so and do this, such and such. And then you have so-and-so call me and tell me that you told them. Do any of you all have kids who just might lie to you to get out of a little trouble? Okay. So you make sure that you can. So So she was going to have to call this teacher, and so she was going to do it. We're sitting there in the kitchen, in the room with her, with the phone, that maybe in for cell, I guess it was for cell phones. And I mean, there was weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth. So it kind of went like this. This is so there. This is Sarah Ramsey, and I said something unkind about you, and I called to apologize. Oh, can I speak with her? So she apparently got the woman's sister first. And then the lady said, oh, you must be talking about my sister, the teacher, I'll get her. So when the right person gets on the phone, we go right back into hysteria. This is her Ramsey. But we required her to make things right. Number 22. We sought to live a life that they would want over what the world would offer them. We sought to live a life that they would want over what the world would offer them. Listen closely. The most important other person in who your child becomes is you. It's not the pastor. It's not the youth guy, the children's director. It's not the church. It's not the school. It's not the teacher. It's not the principal. It's not the coach. It's you. For them to be emotionally intelligent, you have to be emotionally intelligent. For them to be spiritually healthy, you have to be spiritually healthy. Who our kids become is more caught than is taught. Monkey see, monkey do. So what kind of life are you living as a parent? Are you their greatest asset in becoming who God made them to be? Or are you a liability, possibly their greatest liability? If they see you as a hypocrite, as somebody who says one thing and does another, you're their greatest liability. Most people don't go to church because they've been. And a lot of them got hurt by somebody by the hypocrisy or ugliness they've seen in a church or out of Christians, people who call themselves Christians anyway. Jesus came to give us a life that is superior to any life this world has to offer. He called it an abundant life. The abundant life is the obedient life. It's the blessed life. We didn't want our girls to adopt our faith because we did, or because we wanted them to. We wanted our girls to adopt faith in Christ and following Him because it's what they wanted to do. It had to become their faith, not ours. Listen, all you young people. Some of you are like our kids. You grew up in church. It's all you've ever known. You believed in Jesus since you're old enough to believe anything kind of deal. But there has to be some point where you say, I don't believe this because my mom and dad do. I don't believe this because Rocky or Brennan does. I believe this because I believe this. If my mom and dad dropped out, I wouldn't. I don't have their faith, I have my faith. If Rocky messed up or Brennan messed up and didn't love the Lord anymore, wouldn't change what I'm doing because I don't have their faith, I have my faith. Are you following me? You got to have your own faith. Each of your kids has to decide for him or herself if he or she will follow Jesus. In John 4:39-42, it's a story of the woman at the well, and the lady goes back to her town and tells them she's found the Messiah. And it says there that, quote, many of them believed because of the word of the woman. But in verse 42, there they were saying to the woman, it's no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves and know that this one is indeed the Savior of the world. Each of us must have our own faith. We can't believe because somebody else does. We have to decide to follow Jesus for ourselves. I decided to follow Jesus. Though none go with me, I still will follow. That's real faith. It's not real faith if I follow Jesus when the people I like are following Jesus and they quit following Jesus, I won't follow him either. It's not real faith when in high school I'm all into the church and youth group and all that's going on that I go off to UT and become some other person. That's not real faith. That's what you find out you didn't have real faith. You had no faith or somebody else's faith. Are you following Jesus because somebody else did or does? Or are you following Jesus because you believe in him? And if everybody in this room decided to go atheist, it wouldn't matter to you. Because your faith has nothing to do with them, it has to do with him.